Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul, joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler up at Harvard University. For an instant reaction here, Ziggy, one of the big dominoes in the NFC North, another one of those dominoes has fallen in Jonathan Gannon, the former Cardinals head coach, former Eagles defensive coordinator, is now the defensive coordinator of the Packers. And in the grand scheme of this whole coaching carousel that we've had, it's been a fun one so far, and luckily, it looks like the Vikings are going to keep Brian Flores here. The Lions bring in Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals, and Jonathan Gannon is now in the NFC North as well, so that might make these Packers-Lions matchups a little more interesting last year, even more so than they were going to be before this. But I thought the Packers defensive coordinator position might have been the most important coordinator position to fill in the entire offseason across the NFL. Lions offensive coordinator was a big one too. But the Packers offensively, we kind of know what we're getting from them. When Jordan Love's healthy, they're going to have one of the most lethal offenses in football. Yes, they don't have any playmaker that kind of jumps off the page to you the way that the Vikings do or Detroit. It depends how you view Josh Jacobs, which we've had this discussion several times. Tucker Kraft is great.
You can know the Packers will have an efficient, productive offense when Love's on the field.
Yes, when Jordan Love is playing, they are dangerous. But defensively, there were problems. They had moments this year. They had surges, but especially after Micah Parsons went down, the defense sort of crumbled. Their best games were against Chicago, but we saw those games. The expanding water balloon until eventually it burst and Chicago became unstoppable at the end of both games that the Bears hosted. So I viewed the defensive coordinator position for the Packers as one of probably the most important of the offseason, because when this team is clicking, you saw it this year, they were arguably the best team in all of football, not just the NFC, not just the NFC North. And shoring up that side of the ball was the big question mark. And now we're going to talk about a lot of things here. There's a lot of free agent discussions, Jonathan Gannon and how he likes edge rushers and the Packers' lack of edge rushers. There's a lot to talk about here, but your initial reaction upon seeing it as a Viking fan was what?
Well, my initial reaction was, wow, the Packers just added a defensive coordinator who was a head coach of a defense that was 27th in yards allowed and 29th in scoring last year.
Yes.
This is awesome. Then I stepped back. My second reaction was, well, wait, hold on. Arizona's not very good. Sometimes guys are good head coaches, but bad coordinators. He was so good when the Eagles were 14-3. Then my third reaction, we're seeing low as a reaction here, was, wait a second. In the fourth quarter, the Eagles were outscored in over half their games when they went 14-3. Maybe the Packers are just getting more of the same out of Jonathan Gannon, a conservative guy who runs relatively vanilla defenses that are weak in the middle of the field and regularly folded in the fourth quarter. Maybe things are great for Vikings fans, Paul. Maybe we can sit back and it's just going to be more of the same in Green Bay.
It's a great fourth quarter stat that you bring up in the sense of what recently just happened, right, to Green Bay. And I think a lot
Packers fans how they feel about their fourth quarter defense.
Oh no, I know, and that was Jonathan Gannon in Arizona, as you said, his defense was towards the bottom of the league. But what you can look at too is the personnel that he's working with, right? In Arizona, Budda Baker was, I believe, the only Pro Bowler that they had over the course of 2 years, and they had an alternate as well. But the talent just wasn't there, and the talent's there in Green Bay. Now it's a room that needs more. They're going to need to go out and make some moves in free agency to bolster that unit to be at the level they want to be.
They're doing better than Josh Sweat and Calais Campbell.
Yes. Calais Campbell. How old is Calais Campbell? Is like 40? He has to be 40 years old right now.
He was 39 this season.
Yeah.
He was born in 1986.
I actually always liked Jonathan Gannon. Even with the Cardinals' struggles, I think he's a goofy guy. You see, maybe it was Hard Knocks. I don't remember what docu-series it was. Where when he was first hired and he was introduced to the Cardinals and he's doing the whole zing, zing, zing. Remember that video?
Yeah.
When he's meeting players and you're just like, what the hell is wrong with, what is this guy doing here? How can anyone take him seriously? And he's in the meeting room saying, who took the bus to work? Did it light a fire in you? Did you feel it? And guys are just kind of looking at him like, what the hell are you talking about? And I think it's sort of like Mike McDaniel-esque. When you're winning, you can get away with those things. When you're losing, it looks really weird, and it's hard to
Nobody
believe.
cares about having a cool coach when you're losing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I wouldn't say cool would not be the word. Cool would not be the word that I would use.
Well, no, I just mean like whether you're cool or not. When you open the year for your career 4-13 as a head coach, like nobody really cares what you say.
Yeah, I mean the Cardinals lost the most games in, I believe, the history of their franchise this season, and they allowed the most points in the history of their franchise, I believe, this season. Like, it was a disaster, and part of that obviously falls on Jonathan Gannon, who was pretty much ran out of Arizona. I remember I was talking about the episode when we reacted to his firing, how I think maybe it was the week before he got fired, a couple of days, he had a birthday post from the Cardinals, and it was just a bloodbath in the comment section. Arizona fans were canceling their season tickets. It was pretty much forced out by the fans. Now, it would have happened, I would imagine, either way. But Jonathan Gannon did not have, let's say, a peaceful exit from Arizona. But you have to look back on his Philly track record and say, okay, like this is a guy who, in his first year in Philly, they were a decent defense. And in year 2, they took that jump. And that was a loaded roster. But we were talking off camera. What was the key of that roster? Getting after the quarterback. 70 sacks that season. And are the Packers capable of doing that? Well, you have Micah Parsons, but after that, it's kind of a bare room. And Rashawn Gary is someone who you saw Andy, I think, put out the poll, or maybe I can't remember if it was Andy or another Packer person put out a poll that said, "Do you want Rashawn Gary back next season?" It was 3% yes, 3% from Packer fans. Just hasn't been, the bang is not worth the buck at all when you're projected to pay him $28 million this year. So when you're talking about a defensive coordinator who likes to play quarters coverage, I believe he played it the most in the NFL this year, 23%. Was he up there top 3?
Noting, he didn't call the plays in Arizona.
He
Obviously,
didn't, but
he played a huge role in the defense, but Nick Rawlis was calling the plays.
It was the highest total in the NFL, 23% of snaps. When you play that sort of defense and you want your guys to get after the quarterback, a Packer fan, any Packer fan, who's paid attention to the team goes, wait a second, that could be a problem this year. Is that something that would concern you?
Well, one thing about Jonathan Gannon that I think works to his benefit going from Arizona to Green Bay is that he's been a guy who's very flexible in the sorts of defenses he's willing to run. Right? He talked a few years ago when he was being interviewed for Philadelphia. They asked him, what scheme are you going to run? He said, I don't know yet. I run the scheme based on the personnel I have. He ran a lot of 4-3 in Philadelphia. He ran a lot of 3-4 in Arizona. They tried a lot of simulated pressures in Arizona because, as he said, they didn't have the defensive line talent in Green Bay. But one thing you can know is that at his core, this guy is a Vic Fangio disciple. He is not like Brian Flores. I mean, nobody is like Brian Flores, but he's really not like Brian Flores in calling a million blitzes, being exotic with the looks they show. He wants to run a relatively traditional defense where you can send 4 guys, one of them gets to the quarterback, and you play either zone or man, depending on how things are looking with your corners and safeties. So I don't think Packers fans need to freak out. I think that he's going to be willing to be flexible with the personnel they have. But bringing in Jonathan Gannon, I think, puts even more pressure on Green Bay than they already had. You have got to get the defensive line fixed this offseason. And I will talk through some of the options that they have, but they don't have a choice. If the defensive line isn't better, teams are just going to target the deep middle of the field again. It's going to be exactly what you saw last year.
When you got a player like Micah Parsons last season, obviously it's extremely exciting. And I remember we hopped on our reaction. I was in Florida before the Notre Dame-Miami game, one of the best shows we've ever had. Obviously, me and you were really, really disappointed and not happy about the Packers getting a caliber of player like Micah, who we've said numerous times on this show, maybe the best player in football at times.
Even though he was hurt a lot last year, I think he lived up to that billing. He was a game changer for the defense.
Yeah. But one concerning thing for the Packers is that their defense started to feel like an NBA team in a sense. Well, remember those Cavs LeBron's teams where it was LeBron James and a bunch of supporting cast, and you go, how the hell is LeBron doing this with the guys around him? And the Packers defense, like they have some other big time players there, but at times you turned on Green Bay's defense and you would go, Micah Parsons is the only person doing anything. He's the only one showing up today. And that can get you far. Micah Parsons is that good. And the rest of the defense is good enough that they were able to rely on Micah to get after the quarterback. He had double the pressures or double the win rate. I can't remember what the number was of any other Packer defensive lineman. And I mean, he at moments he had that defense looking terrifying. But the second he went down, you could see, oh shit, like LeBron. Imagine LeBron goes down on some of those Cavs teams. You go, wait a second, this unit actually is not good at all. This guy was carrying everything. And the Packers defense can't operate like that. Football is different than basketball. In the NBA, you can get away with one guy being the show. In football, it's 11 dudes. And if one of them, and if one guy doesn't do his job, it's the Bill Belichick thing. You're going to get torched. So watching Green Bay this year, the Micah show was awesome. And he's a thrilling player to watch. But they need more there. And everybody, they talk about accountability. Micah was saying that if you're running, run faster. If we need to play 80 snaps, play 80 effing snaps. And Jonathan Gannon talks a lot about accountability, though I'm not sure many people in Arizona listen to him from the way they played. But there does need to be accountability. And there needs to be there needs to be a move for these pass rushers for a team that's ready to win right now. So who are some of those guys they can go after?
Well, we'll talk about the guys they can go after. I do think the single biggest addition to this defensive line is going to be Devontae Wyatt coming back. And in general for the Packers, I know you were talking about how there weren't any stars other than Micah. Some of that was just injuries, right? Devontae Wyatt was out. Xavier McKinney, I don't think played as well as he wanted to. Evan Williams missed some games.
Well, sure, but I mean, Devontae Wyatt got hurt late in the year, and Xavier McKinney, if we say like he didn't play as well as he wanted to, he didn't play well. He needs to play better.
Well, part of it's going to have to be you need to get those guys back, and they need to be playing better. But their Packers are in an interesting spot on edge rusher, where really, if you look at the free agents, because I think you're right, Rashawn Gary just has to leave, and they can save about $20 million on his contract by designating him a post-June 1 release. And every team in the NFL always wants more edge rushers. The market this year, there's one guy everybody is going to want, or at least be interested in, and that's Trey Hendrickson. Now, he's coming off that core injury, right? He re-aggravated whatever injury he had, trying to play through it after he got hurt week 6. So he didn't put up great numbers this year, and he's getting older. But Trey Hendrickson is the only player in free agency that you can be confident if you add him, at least for next year, that he's going to be a game changer.
I mean, Trey Hendrickson, he's 31. This is his age 32 season that'll be entering. Yeah. And he's someone as well. It's funny how the list of people in Cincinnati just continues to grow of star players who would just probably like get me the hell out of here. He's been the only bright spot on that Bengals defense for a while now. He's the one guy when I look across the available edge rushers that if they got him, I'd go, okay, this could be a problem. Because I have to imagine there's still a little bit of gas in the tank, even though, as you said, he's coming off a year where he was hurt. Which bodes well for Green Bay trying to make a move for him. That's who I would look at because the window is now. And of course, it depends on what else you're trying to do, what Brian Gutekunst decides, because you only have so much available money. But if you bookend, if you have Parsons and Hendrickson, that's a scary. I mean, that is a scary duo that you would be throwing out.
Yeah, from 2023 to 2024, Trey Hendrickson had 35 sacks. Last year, the Green Bay Packers, including Micah Parsons, had 36.
But do you think they're at the point where, with if you have Micah, do you need to go out and necessarily get a star, or would you focus more so on just kind of supplementing the rest of the roster?
So Green Bay has some interesting free agency choices this year because they've got guys leaving on offense and defense. So they can generate some money, right? Elton Jenkins is going to be gone. Rashawn Gary is going to be gone. But on defense, you'll have some tough choices to make. Do they want to bring back Quay Walker? And at what price are they going to be able to get him if they do want to bring him back? On offense, right? You've got offensive line leaving. Were you happy with what you saw from Sean Ryan and Rasheed Walker last year? Maybe not. But are you going to be able to get somebody better? You need to find someone to play center. Romeo Doubs is a free agent. So Green Bay is in an interesting spot. My view is they've tried we have depth, we have youth, someone's going to be able to break out for us approach for 2 straight years now, and it just hasn't happened. I mean, the closest thing to a breakout, I think, of players we were hoping would break out is like Lucas Van Ness looking good on the defensive interior. Christian Watson breaking out is like one of those other things. Tucker Kraft has been good, but like,
Watson
they've not
breaking
had a
out.
breakout on defense.
Yeah.
And, if you look at some of the other edge rushers you can have, you could get Joey Bosa. You could get Leonard Floyd. You could get like Draymond Jones out of Baltimore. But I think Trey Hendrickson is the only guy there that could be a difference maker. If you go from a good defensive line where a lot of pressure's on Micah to a terrifying defensive line where you've got a strong interior and strong guys on the edge, that's what fueled Gannon's defense in Philadelphia. I'm willing to do what it takes to make it happen.
Yeah, and I'm reading just a really funny article written by a Washington Commanders blogger. Packers' move may have quietly saved the Commanders from a baffling mistake. Jonathan Gannon is no longer an option. Now, he's not saying that specifically. This is Dean Jones, came out about an hour ago. He's not saying that Gannon is a terrible hire objectively for any team. What he's saying is Washington's front four just isn't good enough. And when you look at Gannon's track record of success, as we've been saying on this episode, he needs to have a front four that can generate pressure. And they said, the Packers can do that, or at least one Packer can do that. And maybe, so who knows if he would have even gone to Washington to begin with. But you can kind of see, right, what everyone notices. Okay, he needs to be able to generate pressure, and then you work from there. So I think going out there and getting the best edge rusher available is a good move. It's one that they need to make.
No number two to target. Like, you can get among the guys who are like hitting free agency that have been productive in the past, like Khalil Mack and Hassan Reddick are not going to get it done. I'm sorry. And then if you ask, like, well, we could go for a bargain bin value with like a Dante Fowler, or Chason just had 7 sacks with the Patriots. Marcus Davenport, we can try what Detroit's been doing for years and hop on that train.
I mean, we tried that too. Marcus Davenport, I feel bad for him. Just can't get on the field. He can't play. Every year, it's a season-ending injury. I don't even. How many games did he miss this year?
I have no idea.
I don't know. He may, for all I know, he may have played. I stopped paying attention with the Davenport. I feel bad for him because he's not that old. I still don't think.
No, Marcus Davenport. He's what, like 29? But this is the thing, right? When you're looking down this list of names and free agents, or here's the other thing the Packers could do: they could use their second-round pick to take an athletic project. Well, Packers fans do not want to take a project edge rusher in the second round.
No, they're ready to win now.
And I think at a certain point, you have to tell Jordan Love, look, man, I know some guys are leaving on offense. The offensive line might get weaker. You might have to lose Romeo Doubs. Some team, I think, is going to offer Doubs some money. But we are paying you to drive this offense without being in a perfect situation. We can improve the defense. We know that's been a problem. You can't control that. But I think they're going to have to ask Jordan Love to take another step forward, and they're going to have to try and give Gannon what he can on defense. Because Packers fans can't sit through another season like what they just had, where Love is good, the defense has ups and downs, they're waiting for guys to break out, and then you're the 7th seed and get bounced in the first round.
And just to clarify, the injuries, which we've mentioned a couple times, were just crippling for Green Bay. Because Hafley, I thought Hafley did a decent job over his 2 years in Green Bay. But when you have the amount of guys going down that they did this year, it was just chaos. I mean, it was truly detrimental. But also part of it is the roster construction of not having enough up front. And that in the cornerback room, we said that was a unit that worried us coming into the season. I remember we were saying we would have brought back Jair. Now look, Jair winds up getting hurt, and obviously in hindsight you can make your determinations much easier.
They knew about injury stuff. We did.
Yeah, but still, that cornerback room needed help. Clearly, Hobbs and Valentine and Nixon wasn't good enough, and I don't know if they're going to try and fix that this offseason. See, it almost feels like they might try and run that back.
Wait, I don't know what corners they're going to go after. Exactly.
No, I know, and that's part of the problem. Like, there are problems on the Green Bay defense that Jonathan Gannon is going to have to fix. And you liked Jeff Hafley, and a lot of those couldn't be. So there's work to do in Green Bay. The good thing is you feel like you have maybe the second best. Some people might even view him as the best quarterback in the conference. So you're going to be competitive. You're going to be getting a lot of these guys back. I just can't wait. I can't wait to see the Packer video come out again, and in the team meeting, he's gonna be like, "Hey, who's hungry in here?" And I want to see Micah Parsons' face. He's like, "Oh shit, what did we do?" But jokes aside, I actually like Jonathan Gannon. I thought he did a really good job in Philly, and some guys just aren't ready to be head coaches, and I think Jonathan Gannon fell under that category, where clearly. And Arizona's a tough place too, right? Steve Kerr mentioned when he was being courted by the Knicks and the Warriors, he said, look, if I had gone to New York, it would have been a disaster. Would have been laughed out of the building. Arizona did not have a lot of the pieces to win. And part of that is on Gannon and their staff there for not being able to build over the 3 years. But if Jonathan Gannon were put in charge, I'm trying to think of if Jonathan Gannon were put in charge of, let's say, I was going to say the Bears, but no, I think Ben Johnson legitimately did come in and change everything.
The 1985 Chicago Bears.
Sure. I mean, that's a little bit of a... If you put Jonathan Gannon back in charge of the Philadelphia Eagles defense right now, I still think they'd have a very good year. He can coach.
If you're pulling from Golden State, Steve Kerr was pretty fortunate. So, I'm sure New York would have been a disaster because he didn't get to walk into a job
with Steph Curry.
Yeah, some of the greatest players to ever play. But look, that's
what I mean. You need good players. And Arizona,
and Jonathan Gannon, he wasn't being a good head coach and being a good coordinator are just totally different skills, right? As we said, he wasn't even calling the plays in Arizona. This can work out, but what this hire does is it pushes the pressure back to Brian Gutekunst. They need to improve the personnel on defense. If they'd gotten Brian Flores, they could say, look, we don't need to add any expensive guys. Flores can make magic out of anything, and he has his own guys they want. Now, obviously, the Wilfs were never going to let Brian Flores leave. The reporting from NFL Network is that we made a Godfather deal to Brian Flores. But because the Packers weren't able to do that, and fair enough, Brian Gutekunst has got to figure out the defense now because it can't be another year of wait and develop.
No, and that is something that that's something that if I were a Packer fan, I would be a little nervous about. Because while you do like Jonathan Gannon, the Vikings, when they got Brian Flores, you knew they were getting a madman, right? A madman on defense who was going to probably turn that unit around. Or at least I felt pretty confident they were. When Ben Johnson went to the Bears, you knew they were getting the hot young coordinator who, revolutionized that Lions offense. And in the same sense that the Steelers signed Mike McCarthy, you go, oh, what is going to change here? I get a little bit of that feeling with Gannon of, okay, is anything going to change? I don't know. We'll see over time. But if they brought, and I don't know who they could have gone after that I would have felt differently about, but there's that looming suspicion to me that the Packers are going to look very similar again. And they're at the point now where they need to come out next season and show that things have changed. Because if you get the same thing that we've had the past handful of seasons now, or at least let's say under the Jordan Love era, where they're good enough to win, but they don't consistently show up, that's when fans are going to start freaking out, especially after signing LaFleur to this big extension. And rightfully so, because the team's good enough to win a Super Bowl. So that's looming for me is, okay, I like Gannon. But again, I'm talking as if I were a Packer fan, just for the sake of Green Bay fans being able to kind of relate to it. That's just my concern.
Yeah, this is the thing, is I think Green Bay, and I don't like saying this, but I do think the defense is close, right? The defense that started the year in September and October, right? They had 2 sacks in the month of December. December was just a disaster month for them.
That was no Micah.
September, October, and even the first half of November were all very good for them.
Well, that was with and without Micah, and that's what I was saying earlier on. It can't be a one-man show. You're going to get blown out.
But when you're close like this, mixing things up, bringing in a new coordinator who keeps some continuity, I think the danger of bringing in someone like Flores would have been now it's a totally different scheme and everyone has to relearn it and guys are left out. Like,
yeah, but he would have been. You trade Gannon for Flores any day of the week.
No, and I understand that, but I just mean this. At least if you're not going to add the best coordinator on the market, at least you're keeping some continuity here.
Sure.
What they need to do is improve the personnel a little bit. I don't think they need a huge improvement. It's not like when Gannon went to Arizona. It's like, all right, buddy, you got to start over this defense, and then hope that gets there. Now, will they do it? I think you're leaning no. I'm actually inclined to lean yes. I think Green Bay is right on the cusp, and I think they're going to make the free agent moves they need. But I've been saying that for like 3 seasons now, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah,
so
well, to be fair, last year they did. It wasn't free agency, but they did get Micah. I mean, they made the move last year.
Yeah, but the other big moves they made were to add Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks.
Yeah, I don't think that their defense, if they run it back, is going to be. It'll be. I think it's still good enough to win, but it's not a unit that I'm going to look at and say, oh, they can rely on that unit being consistently good.
You don't want it to be good enough to win. You want it to actually win you games, right?
Yeah.
You're not looking for a good enough defense this year.
Yeah, I mean, and look, the Vikings defense, right? They won us. They won us like 7 games this year, and the Packer defense wasn't bad throughout the year. I mean, they had moments. I thought, didn't we say the Packers won like 20 games or scored 20 points a game? We did this test in like early November, so things may have changed. But the Packers defense held a lot of teams under 20 points. Part of the problem was they were allowing at times long drives and just back-breaking drives. I think back to like the Bengals game, even though they wound up winning that game. Is when Flacco got hot, you're going like, whoa, what happened here in the second half?
I'll tell you, adding a Vic Fangio disciple of the Matt Eberflus hits philosophy is not going to change that.
Yeah, what's the acronym for again?
It's
hustle,
intensity,
turnovers,
tackle, and smarts, or takeaways and smarts.
Yeah. All right, so if you had to grade it 1 to 10, let's say 10 being the best, where would you say this higher falls?
I'm going to say a 5 is like a higher you're fine with. I'm going to put it at a 6.
Yeah, I was thinking 6.
Packers fans should be slightly optimistic about this. They definitely didn't blow it. They hired someone with potential. But I don't think you should be thrilled and think this is the hire that's going to transform your defense either.
There were a lot of people who wanted Jim Leonard, the passing game coordinator for the Broncos and former Badgers defensive coordinator, or at least the rumors were. It looked like as soon as Denver got knocked out, he was going to be a candidate they were going to target. Raheem Morris was another guy that they were talking about. So Gannon, it kind of came out of left field for me. I know they interviewed him already. I just did not. It was not a name that I was expecting to see the headline be.
Yeah, it's you thought there's the Wisconsin connections, there's that guy, but that's just not the direction the Packers wanted to go. Clearly, they were impressed with Gannon. So I think in the building, they're thinking of this as a lot higher than a 6. We'll see if they're right.
Well, they better be. Yeah, they better think it's higher than a 6. If you're a team going for the Super Bowl, you got to make Super Bowl worthy moves. And Gutekunst said it last year. The urgency needs to be ramped up. Micah's talking about accountability. It reminded me of Jonathan Grenard said. What was more is required was what Jonathan Grenard said about the Vikings a season ago.
And that was true at the end of the season, too.
Yep, it's still more is required. Now, the defense played well. I mean, more is required of really one position in Minnesota. But all right. We'll wrap it up there. Just a quick reaction. Jonathan Gannon hired as the Packers defensive coordinator. Keep your phones on you as these Vikings Joe Burrow rumors continue to heat up. We'll hopefully have an instant reaction over the next couple months of Joe Burrow to the Vikings.
I do just have to say, prime clickbait account Walter Football put out a tweet saying that like the Bengals asked for multiple firsts and JJ McCarthy and we said no because the asking price was too high. I just want to be clear, that never happened.
If the Bengals said to the Vikings, we want J.J. McCarthy, Jonathan Grenard, and 3 first-round picks for Joe Burrow, and the Vikings went, we'll do it for 2.
The report was 2 first-round picks is what they asked for, and the Vikings said no.
Yeah, whatever the number is. If the Vikings said no, again, this is another situation. I'd probably fly out to Minnesota and I'd just start removing Kwesi's stuff from his office. You make the move. You make the move for Joe Burrow. If we have Joe Burrow, we go to a Super Bowl. It's not going to happen because when can you remember any time off the top of your head that a guy of Joe Burrow's caliber and Joe Burrow's league-wide ranked, probably top 5 QB in the NFL when he's healthy. They don't go anywhere. You hear rumors and things like that, but they never actually go anywhere. The big move was Peyton, when he was in his mid-30s, going from Indy to Denver after neck surgery. You just don't see guys in their prime. I mean, Drew Brees was, he wasn't Drew Brees at the time.
The only time I think I can really think of it happening where a guy who everyone knew was really talented got moved was Stafford to the Rams.
Yeah, but that was after.
Even that is a very different situation, but that's the closest thing you're looking for.
That was after
in like the past 20 years,
more than a decade, right? And I actually would even go so far to say that was before Stafford turned into what Stafford is right now. I mean, he was great. Don't get me wrong, but now you view him differently. The Lions adding the biggest Jared Goff believer in the entire NFL as their GM and vice president. Yeah, I mean, and that had run its course too in Detroit for a long time.
That was an unusual situation. JJ McCarthy for Joe Burrow is the Bengals decide they don't care about their fans anymore.
Very, very last thing, because we didn't say it, but Mike McCarthy going to Pittsburgh. Did you like that?
LOL. The Steelers are trying to do something different. Rather than hiring a young, promising, exciting, sort of out-of-field guy and deciding to make him the head coach, they added maybe the biggest retread in the history of retreads in Mike McCarthy. He won a Super Bowl in 2010. He was fine in the regular season-ish for Dallas. But no, I don't think this is going anywhere.
The Steelers just feel like they're caught in the 2010s. With Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers, they're trying to get Rodgers back, TJ Watt and Jalen Ramsey. It's like someone needs to remind the Rooneys, hey, it's 2026. It's not 2012 right now. It's not 2015. You're living in the 2020s. Got to make moves that modernize your team. And it felt. I like Mike McCarthy. He's a dude that when Dak was healthy, won 12 games pretty much every year in Dallas. He's a successful coach. But the Steelers, it was the perfect time for a rebrand, and they just won't do it. Mike Tomlin walks away.
If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you're a fan, you're saying what we want is Super Bowl upside, and you're adding a guy who was great in the regular season and then had two of the biggest playoff meltdowns of the past 20 years, right? And Dak runs the ball against the 49ers, and then the Packers show up and just kick the crap out of you at home. I don't really know what the plan is here. He's old.
And now you have some of the fans who are saying, "Oh well, Rodgers is coming back now." And I'm like, "What? You want Rodgers back? You can't go anywhere with him."
Even if you do want Rodgers back, I don't think it's like Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that's going to be a huge selling point for Rodgers.
Again, it's not 2012.
when Mike McCarthy last coached Aaron Rodgers, what, in 2017, 2018?
Yeah, it's right.
And that was after maybe? Some pretty rough runs.
I don't get it. It felt like that you had the perfect chance to kind of start over, and you had the buy-in from fans too. If you tried to start over and it failed, fans would have said, "Well, at least we're doing something different." They won't stop trying to be competitive in Pittsburgh, but in continuing to try to be competitive, they're actually making themselves less competitive.
Yeah, I don't think this is like the Vikings.
You need to suck to get good in football.
I don't think that's true, but it's
most
different
of the time
than the Vikings.
How many teams do you know that can just kind of continually be good, and then they peak up, and then they go back to just being good? Buffalo was horrible. They get Josh Allen. I mean, Buffalo's bad for a really long time.
Buffalo being horrible had very little to do with them getting Josh Allen.
No, I know. Maybe Buffalo's a bad example.
It's not, the difference is this isn't like the NBA where you have to get a top 3 draft pick or you're screwed. In the NFL, the good teams tend to suck just because it's hard to be good in the NFL forever. But it's not like the players dominating the NFL by and large are early draft picks that you couldn't have gotten any other way.
I don't know. Most of the quarterbacks are first round quarterbacks.
But everybody gets a first round pick, and you can move up to get a quarterback. The Chiefs have moved up to get Mahomes. It can be done.
It can be done. But who's in it right now? I mean, Nix was a top 10 pick. May was number 2.
Wasn't Bo Nix 12?
Maybe Nix was 12 right after McCarthy.
Yeah, so middle of the first round. And you could have jumped the Broncos easily if you really.
But it's like Stafford was 1, Darnold was top 5, Jamae was 2. A lot of these guys.
There's no way you're saying Sam Darnold is. You're bringing out Sam Darnold as the example of you have to suck to be good.
No, I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, he was a top 5 pick.
And then they just added Sam Darnold.
Yeah, Darnold's one of the rare cases over the past handful of years of a dude who's, I mean, it's one of the best reclamation stories in football. But no, I mean, look, even like Caleb, right? Number 1 overall pick. You can just go through these teams. Herbert, top, number 6? Like Stroud, 2. I mean, the guys who are making the playoffs, a lot of them are top 10 picks. And it's hard when Pittsburgh's picking 17 every year. Even, I mean, if yes, every now and then you can make a move up to number 10 and get someone who's unbelievable. But, or you have a Ravens case where, Lamar breaks out and he's a 32nd pick. But
you have the Eagles case.
Yeah, the Eagles. What do you mean? The Eagles. The Hurts is good, but people want Tanner McKee playing this year.
Sure, but they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I know. I like Jalen Hurts. It's just still.
I'm just saying, if you look at the NBA playoffs, you can ask how many teams that have a realistic chance of winning it all in any given year aren't loaded with like top 3 or 5 talent. The answer is basically none. In the NFL, it's a decent number. It's different.
You need the quarterback. You just need the quarterback. When you don't have the quarterback, you need to have an all-world defense or an all-world rest of roster.
Yeah, but the difference between the NFL and the NBA is there's a lot of ways to get your all-world quarterback.
Are there?
Yeah.
It's all in the
draft. Compared to the NBA, where the only way to get all-world players usually is having the lottery balls bounce your way. Until very, very recently, with like Giannis and Jokic, every NBA champion had a top 3 pick as their best player.
I'm just like, how many guys in the NFL are you really looking at who haven't been high draft picks? Are you saying, okay, like that's a way you could get your quarterback?
Again, Seattle is an example. Philadelphia is an example. The Rams got Stafford in a trade. The 49ers have their guy. Jordan Love came at the end of the first round.
You're picking very, very rare. Like, these are rare cases.
I just listed half the teams in the playoffs in the NFC. Bo Nix came at 12. You could have traded up ahead of them. Right? Like, it's completely different.
But are any of those guys, like, is Bo Nix the guy, like, do you want Bo, really?
Bo Nix took this team to the AFC Championship game, and they'd be favorites if he were healthy. This is just a very strange argument.
I don't know if obviously you can be competitive with these guys like Purdy and Nix was good enough to get them to the championship game, but again, they're not the superstars. Right? Stafford was a weird case, but most of the superstars are early round draft picks. That's just how it goes. And Pittsburgh's always picking like 18th or 19th. And they're not aggressive. But yeah, all right. We can. I don't even know if we're agreeing to disagree. It's just we probably agree more than we think. Okay, so anyway, Jonathan Gannon to the Packers, Mike McCarthy to the Steelers, and Joe Burrow to the Vikings soon. So we'll wrap it up there. Not sure if we'll be live after we'll see how the games go tonight, but at the very least we'll have something tonight or tomorrow morning. So keep your your ears tuned to that, and we'll see you soon.